I believe in doing my best to be a great instructor for my students. So I wanted to cover these points because I really feel like it helped me outline what it meant to be a better teacher and to make sure I could give my students what they were looking for when they came to class. One of the things I definitely think is important to keep in mind is that class is about them. It is not about us as the instructor. So keeping that in mind, that class is about them, you start to gear your instruction towards them. You start to focus more on them and take the focus off of yourself. And I say this because a lot of the time people think, oh, it's my class, I get to do what I want to do. But at the same time, is it serving the student best? Is it serving the people who are walking through your studio best? We want to make sure that they feel welcome, that they feel that they're being supported, whether it's great customer service, it's listening to their needs, whatever that may entail for you, but it really is about them. One way to keep it about your students is to know how your students learn. I think this is really vital information and something that gets often looked over. Are they kinesthetic learners? Are they visual learners? Are they auditory learners? Do they need to write and take notes? Do they need to record at the end of class? Do they need to just sit back and actually watch? These are really important because you may have to change the dynamic of your class or the way you instruct in order to make sure that your students receive the information well and that they're getting the communication that you are wanting to convey to them. So if I want to teach them a hip drop and they are completely auditory of a learner and all I do is this helping them? No, not at all, because you're not saying anything. The other thing too is not only knowing how to teach them, but teaching them how to teach themselves in that form of communication. So when I'm drilling with my students and I know that one of them is visual, one of them is auditory, or one of them is everything, right? Kinesthetic, auditory, visual, reading, writing, all that stuff, then I have to teach in a way that makes sure that I get across. So then I'm teaching them the hip drop and I'm like, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, or I give them 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or down, lift, down, lift, down, lift, and I encourage them with the different verbiage that I used to find the one that makes most sense for them. In their head, what makes more sense? Drop, up, or down, up, or drop, lift, or 1 and 2 and 3 and using that inflection in my voice to even insinuate 1 and 2 and 3. See how it's lower? And then I go up. So all of this makes a difference to your students, and believe me, they appreciate it. They appreciate that you take the time to learn how they learn and then turn around and also help them teach themselves in a way that they can really grasp the information faster. I really like touching base with my students. So one of the things that I'm asking them for is their feedback, what they like, what they didn't like, what would they like to see, what would they like to not see anymore. And you'll be surprised at the answers, because something that you thought was like, oh, this is so popular, they don't even want to learn. Or something that's not very popular, they're like, oh, yes, 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 I definitely want more of that. Or even just taking a snippet of one of your classes within a session, and they're like, you know how you touched upon that? We really like that information. Can you expound upon that in another session? And so this is really important to get their feedback, because essentially, remember, the class is about them. We are giving them what they want. And it's really important to actually identify what is it that they're looking for and why they're even coming to class to see you. Sometimes the student's experience is based on the teacher's way of being. And I'm saying that specifically like that because I think if you're having a bad day or if you're having a really great day, it will wear off on the student as you're going through class, whether or not you think it is. It's this body language that we have. It's this way for us to subconsciously be able to read other people. And one thing I really am a firm believer in is you should teach something that you are confident in. Please do not teach something that you are not qualified to teach, or that you're just like, I don't have quite the footing yet to make sure that I can answer questions that may pop up, even if it's, I'm not quite sure about the answer to that. Let me check on that and get back to you. There's something that is left with the students when you teach something that you're not comfortable in, and it leaves them feeling a little bit uncertain about the credit of the information, like how credible it is, as well as is this based on fact? Do they know the research behind it? Where's the information? Where can I find more information? So if you're confident in the subject matter, absolutely teach it, as well as teaching accurate information, right? But if you're not confident in it, ask yourself, why am I not confident in this information yet? And fill in that gap that would take you from not feeling confident to confident, and then let people know, okay, I'm ready to teach this information. Let's get to it, especially if it's something that the students want. So I really feel that if you are not confident in the information that you are presenting and making sure that it's accurate, it's going to come across to your students as less credible, as something that they should double check with even another teacher or amongst themselves. And you don't want to discredit yourself in that way that they can't trust the information that you're presenting. So really important to make sure that you teach something that you are well versed in and feel good about. So more on the logistics side, I really feel that you should know what you are wanting to teach and outline it. This is really important. I am a lover of improvisation, but I am also a lover of planned things. And so I believe the difference between the two experiences would be how well thought out something may be. And if you're able to outline what you want to cover in a class, you have a little bit more time to prepare. You have a little bit more time to dive in and see if you missed any details, as well as you have an opportunity to make sure that you have enough material to cover that entire class and some. You always want to overplan just a little bit, so that way, in case the class moves a bit faster than you had anticipated, you still have material for that class. That's really important. It's not a great feeling when you're going to a class and the teacher kind of apparently or obviously ran out of information and they're just kind of buying time to get you through. You don't feel like you get a good value out of class. We've been on that end as a student. So as a teacher, it's our responsibility to make sure that you're always providing the value there for your students. And I really feel that when you outline the class, that you can really do that more effectively, especially when you're teaching a session. Know what you're going to teach the next class. Your students are going to ask. They want to know the answer to that. It's different if you're like, every class is a drop-in, there's no planning, and whatnot. But even then, you should have some kind of an idea, unless you're waiting for the feedback of your students after that session's over, to know what else they would like to learn. But really, when you're planning the class that you're about to do, you want to already have in mind the following class. This allows for a more fluid process in your teaching because you can refer to something in the future, give students that sense of long-term education, as well as there's this feeling of continuity, right? Like, I'm not only going from here, but I can get to here. And there's sometimes not a way to get to that point in the middle of one class. So making sure that you're building up into something to allow that seamlessness, that continuity, that fluidity in their education is really important. And it leaves the students feeling like, okay, I'm going somewhere with this. It's not just a one and done, like there's the next step. And then the students really appreciate your forward thinking. So that way they know, like, okay, we're learning this now, so we can better do this later. And I find that's a huge thing that sometimes doesn't happen, is if I'm teaching technique for something that's really complex, if I don't go all the way back to the beginning knowing that end goal in mind, then what ends up happening is I have to backtrack, and that's not a good feeling. Remember, we talked about credibility and trust in the process from student to teacher. So if you know that this end goal is in mind, even in 2 classes or 3 classes from now, you want to work your way backwards and making sure that you're building up the process for your students effectively and efficiently. I don't think I have to dive into this one too much. If you can do handouts, do them. People love handouts. I know it's not the best use of paper. Print it double-sided, be concise about your notes and what you want to give to the student. Let them take notes on that piece of paper. Instead of saying everything, give them the highlights. But if you can do a handout, people love them. It gives them this sense of control over their education and learning process, and it gives them something tangible to mess with, especially, remember, we talked about being a kinesthetic learner, and it's really important for a lot of people. They really appreciate it. Every time I give a handout, they're like, oh my God, I love handouts. That's typically the answer. So if you can do them, do them. Prep your music ahead of time. I know that when I do not prep my music ahead of time, I'm like fumbling for the piece. It's one thing to like have things in different playlists and you need to revert back and forth, but try and consolidate it all into one playlist so that way it becomes more seamless and you have this flow to your class. As well as if you're teaching movement or concept, you have your segments of music already designated for those applications. So that way, when you go to ask your students, okay, let's do it with music, let's apply what we just learned, then you're not like, oh, this doesn't work. Oh, this does work. Oh, thank God. Oh, it's only 5 seconds of working. You know, we've all been there and done that. So as much as you can, prepare your music ahead of time. And then you will also be able to prep the information for crediting the music that you are using as well and send that to your students. Remember at the beginning when I talked about outlining your class, you also want to outline in that you have room for improvisation. This is super important because a lot of the time your students will ask questions and then it's going to prompt some side thought and you're like, you know what, this is really important. I forgot to outline that in the conversation. Let me bring that information in, and you're going to spend 5 to 10 minutes talking about something that wasn't in your outline. So it's really important to make sure you plan for those moments because those moments are important. Spur of the moment questions, things that, you know, students all of a sudden they're like, oh, I didn't think about that. I have this question now. So this is really important to leave room and space for in-the-moment creativity, innovation, answering questions, all this stuff that may pop up. And if you're like me, where I'm like, woo, on the fly, yeah, I succeed, I thrive on that on the fly, then you get to fulfill that need for yourself as well without diminishing the quality of the class. So I really think it's important for us to be able to, just like a choreography, right? You leave moments for improv and in-the-moment performance. So you outline it, make sure you have space and little moments here and there, checking in with your students, not just 5-10 minutes at the end. Make sure you're asking, does anybody have questions? Does anybody need anything right now? Throughout the class. So be mentally prepared as well as timeline and logically or logistically prepared for you to take breaks in the middle of your material to leave for spur of the moment instances. I know this sounds crazy, but one of the things I definitely want to bring up is you should go through the material yourself. Meaning whatever you outlined in class, whatever you plan on doing, you should also do that before you teach, not in the moment of when you're teaching and figure out, oh shit, I can't do this. This is harder than I thought, blah, blah, blah. This is really important because we talked about students trusting the process, trusting you as a teacher. And remember, it's about them and how they're left feeling. So if you find that you cannot execute your own material, what is going to give them the confidence to feel that they will, right? So it's really important. Go through your stuff, practice what you say, practice the movements, practice the concept, make sure that you can communicate effectively what it is that you want to teach. I think that's super important because you don't want to get in the middle of it and have that oh shit face, and then you're like, ha 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 ha, just kidding, we're gonna change it up, right? And yes, we are human, we make mistakes, but you want to minimize those moments as much as possible. Man, oh man, checking your technology before class starts is the thing to do nowadays. Check that it works. I know just in the past couple weeks, I would check my technology, whether it's some online platform or whether it's your stereo, or whether it's your microphone, whatever it may be, test it literally minutes before class. And then all of a sudden it just like wonks out or something happens. I kid you not, like it's happened like 4 times in the past 2 weeks. And I'm like, I don't even understand. So make sure you can check your technology as much as possible right before class, just to make sure everything's going hunky-dory. And if it's not, that you have a backup. I've got like 3 microphones. I'm not suggesting that everyone get 3 microphones, but I have like 3 or 4 backup processes that I can do like this in a couple of minutes, even with my students on. So that way I make sure I don't let the rest of the class quality suffer. So it's really important. Check those moments, have a backup, know your technology well. Not only check it, but know it well. If I can't do this, can I reroute it to do this? So especially nowadays, make sure your stuff is on point as much as you can. I know the students will appreciate it. These are just some mental notes to keep in mind as you're teaching. Can the student repeat the information back to you and even teach you the information back? This is one of the ways to show that they really got the information. Is the way you're presenting in the information easy to grasp and understand? Are you convoluting your words so much and not making it concise enough that your student is like, okay. You know, they feel more mentally exhausted in not a good way after you just taught the class. One of the other things I also like to keep in mind is if someone just walked in my door, depending on the level complexity of your class, would they be able to understand what I'm saying to them? Or am I using terminology in a way that isn't just clear to the everyday person? If I say, slide your hips side to side versus you're gonna change your weight all the way over to the right side until you feel the pressure in your feet and then just like doing all this stuff, like that communicates differently. I'm not saying one is right over the other, but there's a way to lead into more complex language or more specific language than just by starting off the bat. So I would want to say, hey, I'm going to just push my hips side to side. Do your best to keep your legs straight. Right? And then you go into more in-depth language. Now you should feel the weight transfer into your other foot as you put the hip on that side. Do you feel the pressure increase over that foot as you place the hip over it? Do you see what I mean? I'm not using like, oh my God, my flexor in this right glute goes out into my quad. Like that's not even correct. But you know what I'm saying? It's like too far reach. It's not everyday layman terms. So making sure some of these mental notes, how are you actually teaching with language? Is it understandable? Is it in a form that they can repeat it back to you so that way you know that they got it? Really important to check in mentally with the way that you teach and present the information. I super love teaching. And I hope that my students feel that from me. So my last but not least note to you about being the best teacher that you can be, or at least preparing to teach, is do you have a clear goal in mind? Are you being authentic? Are you teaching them from a genuine place? Or are you just trying to make money, which is a whole other conversation with cultural appropriation and all that stuff, which we're not going to talk about in this video. But you want to be really clear about why you're teaching. Is it really to be in the service of the people who walk through your studio? Are you being authentic? Are you saying anything that you truly don't believe in? Or are you saying stuff that you do believe in, but you're like only saying it because that's what people want to hear? People will feel that sense of inauthenticity, that disgenuineness real quickly. And you will see students not come back because of it, because no one wants to be in that space. It's very uncomfortable and it's very like, why is he, she doing that? I don't understand, right? So really get clear about what your purpose is, what your mission is to teach your students, and you stand in that every single time you teach. If it really is about them, your purpose and mission should be something about them, not necessarily only about yourself. Yes, we teach because we love it and we have a passion for it and it means something to us, but it also has to mean something to them. And we need to make sure that we're very clear on that so that way they feel the compassion, the caring, the kindness, the willingness for us to go find information and bring it back in a way that they can understand, right? So I'm so behind this and so like standing in it. Please believe in what you do, because there's a lot of teachers who don't understand the kind of influence that they have on other people. And I think it's really important that you are so clear when you teach other people, because they look up to you. They are looking to you as an expert in the field, right? They're looking up to you as someone they can trust as a good resource of information. So the more clear we are about our passion, our mission, the more discipline we have within that, the more commitment we have within that, and that in and of itself leads us to be a better instructor and be there for our students when they need us most. I know that was a lot of information. We're not looking for perfection as teachers. We're looking to progressively get better from 6 months ago, from a year ago, from 2 years ago. We don't want to be the same teacher because that means we're not growing. And if we're not growing, our students are not growing. And so it's really important for us to keep these things in mind, but try one out. Do one at a time. Do a couple at a time, but don't overwhelm yourself. People know when you're coming from a great place and when you're genuine in your heart and what you're wanting to offer them. So I know this is a lot of stuff to keep in mind, and it's not all inclusive. And so you have your own list as well about what makes a fantastic teacher or how to be prepared to teach. And so just Try on one at a time. See how it goes. Get the feedback from your students. Hey, do you feel that this worked out in our class? How do you feel after, I'm changing this format? And sometimes I tell my students, hey, I want to change up the format. Let me know what you guys think, because I'm always trying to look and see, how can I make this better? How can I make this better, but still enjoying the moments I have with my students at that time. So try on one, try on a couple here and there, but don't overwhelm yourself in trying to be perfect as a teacher, because let's face it, that is unrealistic and unfair of a goal to you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I would love to hear your feedback as a teacher or as a student, and what you appreciate about your teacher and what you appreciate about the teaching process. So let me know what your thoughts and comments are. Love to hear back. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do, because I love to get your feedback. I love to hear your comments. I love to hear your stories. They really are important to me. As well as check out my online classes. If you haven't already, I offer beginning, intermediate, advanced curriculum, and there are some teaching tools in there as well. So I hope that you can join me in dancing together online. Right? And have some fun with it. Have a fantastic day.